Oprah Winfrey, all of a sudden, at the age of 69, Oprah lost 30 plus pounds. And she finally admitted that she's taking a GLP-1. She talked about obesity as a disease. Is obesity a disease?
Right.
Yes, it is. Obesity is an epidemic that's happening in the US now. Technology got us into that trouble. Why are we having so much obesity? Because we eat engineered food, we poison our environment. Technology caused a lot of this. But you know what? Technology will get us out of this.
95% of people, they restrict their calories for over a period of time consecutively. That body is going to react with a hard met plateau.
GLP-1 is changing that world completely.
These GLP-1s are the initial barrier removal so that you can then get into the lifestyle changes that are ultimately going to be needed to really fix this disease.
No other medication have been able to do this. That's why GLP-1s work for kidney disease, liver disease, heart disease, Alzheimer's dementia, colorectal cancer. That for the first time, we have a very effective tool to help us deal with our societal problem of insulin resistance and obesity.
Quite frankly, it's going to put them in a much better situation than they were before because we know how detrimental to your health obesity is. What we're doing right now, this more holistic approach towards GLPs, and we get calls all the time with people just like, it makes so much sense. That's the approach I want to do.
Dr. Dean Jones, DC, is a chiropractic physician and the creator of the Flow Fasting Protocol, a revolutionary approach to weight loss based on his personal and professional experiences.
He is CEO and founder of Colorado Medical Solutions, focusing on functional health approaches that prioritize patient wellness over profit.
Dr. Jones is the creator of the Flow Protocol and Flow University. He is also a noted author and guest speaker at numerous health clinics and podcasts.
Dr. Rudy Eberwin has over 20 years clinical experience utilizing GLP medications for various metabolic issues, such as diabetes and obesity.
Obtained board certification in internal medicine in 2001.
Board certification in age management medicine in 2015. Speaker at AMNG.
Medical director of a major nursing home in Miami and medical director of the Native American Miccosukee Health Clinic.
I had such a blast with you on our last podcast, just getting really down to the nitty gritty of GLP-1 medications. And I know you were just at a conference, so you probably have a lot to share with us. And I'm excited to have you back, Doc.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we had such a great time. It's like your mind, your brain, Doc, you're amazing. Happy to be here. Yeah, I just came back from a conference, which was a biohacking conference. We want to think of ourselves as biohackers. Biohackers, basically, it's you trying by any means necessary to feel your best, to be your best. And I went and talked a lot about GLP-1s, as this is one of the most important biohack tools for anti-aging health, wellness, and longevity. So excited to come and talk about this.
Oh, that's so awesome. And if this is your first time catching us, so my name is Dr. Jones and this is Dr. Eberwin, but we're just going to refer to each other by our first names because we're very comfortable and we want to keep things relaxed for you guys too as well. Let's do a brief little intro. Why don't we start with you, Rudy? Give everybody here that's listening for the first time just a more brief background of where you came from, because you've been in this space for a really long time, this GLP-1 medication.
Yeah, man. So I'm internal medicine trained. I'm a primary care physician, worked in the hospital for many years. I have a weight loss clinic that we started back in 2005, which incidentally, that's the year that the first GLP-1 medication was FDA approved for diabetes, liraglutide. So I started my practice back then. I still do primary care, but really my passion is functional medicine, regenerative medicine, optimization medicine, big on hormone replacement, and now GLP-1 as the biohack of all biohacks.
Yeah, no kidding. And if you want a deeper introduction on him, check out our last episode. We're definitely not going to waste your guys' time because you can check that out too as well. Thanks for sharing that, Rudy. And for me, guys, so my name is Dr. Jones, and I've been in the GLP-1 medication space for about 4 years and focusing on sustainable weight loss for about the past 15, 20 years. And the thing about it is, for me, I'm always trying to figure out, how do we make it sustainable? My personal struggle, and you guys can check out our last podcast to get a better understanding of where I came from. But basically, long story short, I struggled with obesity myself, lost 100 pounds. And the problem is I kept yo-yoing back and forth. And so through my own personal trials and errors, I figured out that we basically got to fast, and we got to fast a lot in order to really, for myself, to be able to sustain my weight. And over the last 10 years working with patients, I pretty much found the same thing to be true, is lots of prolonged fasting done pretty frequently just made such a huge impact in their ability to maintain their weight, but more importantly, just improved all markers of health. And then when these GLP-1 medications came out, that was just like, oh my gosh. Like, for me, came out, I guess I should say they've been out for a while, but when I discovered them and we started incorporating them with our patients, that's when it was just like, oh my gosh, so much easier to get into these deep lifestyle interventions. And the rest has been history. But I won't bore everybody too much, because again, you guys can check out our bios and backgrounds on the prior episodes. Rudy, why don't we just get into it? Where would you like to start, since you just came back from an awesome conference?
First, we got to talk about Oprah today.
Oh,
Oprah
yeah.
Winfrey came out today. Huh?
Said, please do.
Oprah Winfrey came out today, and I love Oprah. And she finally admitted that she's taking a weight loss medication. She's taking a GLP-1, and she had an amazing interview maybe 3-4 months ago when she talked about obesity as a disease, which I'm so happy that we now define obesity as a disease. It's not really a willpower problem. It is a hormonal epigenetic issue that when people deal with it, you deal with it your whole life. And there's a lot of shame associated with it. Oprah has been very public about a battle with weight. And then all of a sudden, at the age of 69, Oprah lost 30 plus pounds.
I saw.
And she was saying it was through walking and hiking. I knew the whole time she had to be on a GLP-1.
Yeah.
I love Oprah, and she's such an amazing figure. Imagine, and she came out saying, we need to stop the shaming. Remember, we talked about tide shaming people from taking a tide medication, telling people that it's in your mind. Just man up, do it the natural way, that you're cheating if you're taking those medications. Yeah. Even Oprah felt that pressure. So she didn't feel comfortable coming out with it. Now she's coming out with it and saying, you know what? It's a great tool. And for me, it's something that's amazing, because our goal doing this, Dean, is to really let people know that for the first time, we have a very effective tool to help us deal with our societal problem of insulin resistance and obesity. So 100%. Why not use it? Why 100%. Not use technology that got us there? If anybody who's dealing with weight issues, dealing with excessive abdominal fat, dealing with food addiction, no matter how you can say it, and whether you need to lose 10 pounds or 100 pounds, if those medications help you, you should be able to use it without shame.
100%. That's definitely probably the first topic I want to get into. Is it relates to that, is obesity as a disease and the basis of obesity. But before we get there, I know Oprah had struggled for a very long time. And like I said, with myself, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. Back in that time, I didn't understand the hormonal basis of obesity. And so I felt something was wrong with me. Why? And then at some point, I just accepted it. Okay, I'm always going to have to try really hard to lose weight, and I'm always going to have to try really hard to maintain it. And I didn't have any other answers. And when back in the day, when I was a personal trainer and managing the trainers and looking at all the people, hundreds of clients we'd have literally every single week. And it was the same thing. It was great for business as running a gym. It didn't make sense until I understood the hormonal basis of obesity. But that's such a controversy right now. That's why I really want to talk about that, is the basis of obesity. What's your take on it? Is it hormones? Is it calories? Talk to me.
Yeah, so definitely. So the first thing, is obesity a disease?
Right.
Yes, it is. And it's been actually classified. There's a billing code for it. So doctors can code for that now. So it's been recognized as a disease. It's not a lack of willpower or character flaw. It is some metabolic dysregulation that happens for many reasons. Now, the second question, is obesity a genetic disease? That's when I say yes and no. Yes, because we do have some genetic influences.
Yep.
The only thing I don't like to say that it's a genetic disease, because when people think of genetic disease, they think they have no power over it. People will tell you, it's in my genes, I'm just going to be fine.
I'm screwed.
This is where the epigenetics over your genes, your environment, your habits can change that. So patients who tend to suffer from obesity, it's a lifelong problem. It's a dysregulation of your metabolism that unfortunately doesn't go away. But you can fight it with better choices, fasting, exercise. And now we notice that it is not just this. It is also a hormonal issue. And when we say hormonal, it's not just testosterone, estrogen. It is because how could you go from somebody who could not lose weight and had no willpower, you give them a GLP-1 agonist that supposedly only works in the stomach, the gut, and then all of a sudden that patient becomes completely motivated, they have willpower, they're able to fast, they listen to what they were supposed to be doing. It has to be something with our hormones, with that GLP-1. So this is where we don't understand how GLP-1s work completely. So GLP-1s are what we call incretin hormones. They target GLP-1, a gut hormone, and in the case of tirzepatide or Mounjaro, they target the two hormones, GLP-1 and GIP. So it's in the gut. But what we notice is that there are GLP-1 receptors in the brain, especially in the hypothalamus, which is the center for reward and the center for hunger control. And we don't understand this. We just know there's receptors there. But anybody who's taking those medication at one point, 80% of people, it doesn't work for 100%. But most people experience what we've described before, decrease of their food noise. They no longer have this chatter in the back of their mind that keeps them, not only, as you were saying, it's even like a mental health issue. It creates anxiety. Then you internalize the failure that, look at this, I went and ate bad again. I gained the weight again. So you internalize all this. GLP-1 is changing that world completely.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't agree more. And a lot of different topics there that I got in my mind that I want to roll through. Let's finish on the genetic aspect, because you had an interesting point there and why you don't like to convey it as a genetic disease. So I want to make sure I understood you and how I also share how we express it, because you're right. When we talk about a genetic disease, it has that connotation of it's irreversible, because that is the case for many genetic diseases. So I like the idea of conveying there's a genetic component to it. And we know it's hereditary, and we know that there's a greater likelihood of, if obesity runs in your family, that you are going to inherit this disease. But that doesn't mean it's not treatable. And more importantly, that's another thing I want to get to is, can we reverse obesity? What does that look like? I have my opinions, and I'm really excited to hear your opinions. But when we talk about this disease, there is that genetic component, but it's not at all 100%. You're screwed. You can't do anything about it. And these GLP-1s are the initial barrier removal so that you can then get into the lifestyle changes that are ultimately going to be needed to really fix this disease. Would you agree with that summary? Okay.
And this is what you're really good at, Dean. It's GLP-1s are amazing, but at the end of the day, it's not easy. It's not an easy way out. You still have to do the work, and your habits are what's going to help you. So when we talk about genetic disease, we have to think there's monogenic genetic disease and polygenic. There's some purely genetic diseases, some syndromes. One I can think about, Prader-Willi syndrome, which is a disease that every patient who has that genetic abnormality gets obese. There's a few monogenic disease that are like this, but the vast majority of obesity that we're seeing, it is really that we're not sure what SNPs, what part of mutations you're getting, but it's more something that's more hereditary, that it's a dysregulation of your metabolism. We like to say that the gene load the gun, the environment pulls the trigger. So just because you have a genes doesn't mean that you have to express the phenotype. Yeah. Just because you have your parents were obese doesn't mean you're going to be obese. You have more risk of this. You have to work harder at this, but you don't need to follow the same footsteps. But that's where, again, it becomes hard, because people are like, if you just eat better and exercise, then you won't follow the footsteps. It's more complicated than this. And GLP-1s lifted that veil to be like, wow, there's a hormonal medication and solution to this. But the solution still stays that you change your habits, you fast, you eat better, you exercise. Now that you fixed your hormones with that medication, it works better. And the big question is, do you need to be on those medications for life?
Oh,
And
yes.
there's patients that may need to. There's patients every time they come off, they regain the weight. I like to give patients a chance to be able to do it on their own. And I tell them, give it a try. Try all those things we do. Your aggressive fasting protocol, which I love, man. If you will need to be sometimes aggressive, your exercise regimen. But if you ever that doesn't work, use the GLP-1 again. Use them.
100%. With a great amount of enthusiasm when we get our patients started, our whole focus is we're going to wean everybody off. But I agree with you. And I make it very clear to patients too. There's no shaming in the fact of needing the medication. First of all, that we talked about the shaming of starting it. But then I always have to make it clear, because when I talk so much about why I think you should wean off, then there comes the sometimes feelings of, Dr. Jones, are you saying that it's a horrible thing that I'm on the medications? No. And I want to be clear, just because I have an emphatic high amount of enthusiasm to help our patients wean off, we'll save that for another show, another episode. But there is no shame to being on the medication for the rest of your life, because that is what an individual person, an individual patient needed. That was their decision, their right. And quite frankly, it's going to put them in a much better situation than they were before, because we know how detrimental to your health obesity is. So I just want to be clear with that before we move on to obesity. Okay. So the basis of obesity. So I know you're in agreement with me that it's the hormonal basis, but let's dive into, what does that mean? The hormonal basis of obesity. What does that mean to you, Rudy?
It's that big word, metabolism, right? When people say my metabolism is slow, until now, we don't have a great test to check what your metabolic rate is. We can calculate the basal metabolic rate, how many calories you burn at rest. We can do those exercises where you measure your VO2 max. You can do all of those things. But at the end of the day, we all know that sometimes you with your friends, and then you have a friend that he can eat anything he wants, he doesn't gain weight. Another one can eat, he smells carbs, and he gains weight. So there is something we do not understand about metabolism. And it's an interplay of many different things, including hormones, genes, epigenetics, so many things that really, as of this point, we don't have a great handle on it. We talked about the last time, one big problem that we're seeing is glyphosate, Roundup, causing metabolic dysfunction. They've done studies that kids who are exposed in utero and their mother had high levels of glyphosate, that pesticide, that they had a higher chance, even if they are eating healthy, to have a higher BMI. So there are so many things we don't understand. That's why I don't even like to oversimplify it to just say it's a hormonal issue, because it is a multifactorial disease that has many facets to it. So a multi-pronged approach is always the best way. And always, me and you were good at this, Dean. We approach that with a lot of compassion, with a lot of empathy, with a lot of saying, I get you, I believe in you, you can do this. You're not weak because you have this weight. You don't have a character flaw. You're not broken. You're an amazing person who just happened to have a disease that makes it more difficult for them to lose weight. Now that we said that, let's work on it.
I wanted to interrupt this show to tell you guys about my free resources to help you guys dive and navigate into the pool of flow protocol fasting. Everything that we do, remember guys, is helping you to wean off the meds so that you can maintain your weight for the rest of your life. So I'll provide a link for you guys to be able to join my free Facebook group where we do weekly live coaching. And we're also going to send you a PDF format where everything's broken down step by step. Take advantage of this, guys, and we'll see you guys later. I'll share with you my viewpoint on at least the hormonal component, because like you said, it's multifactored for sure. And this is where I base my approach. I look at it as insulin resistance, inflammation, that metabolic flexibility. But really, out of all three of those things, and they're all important, they all play, and you could even say thyroid as a fourth too as well. But that insulin resistance, man, that is so crucial. If there was one thing that would work for, in my opinion, from what I've seen across the board for the most amount of patients, it would be addressing the insulin resistance. And so for me, like when I look at the hormonal basis of obesity, that's what I'm looking at, is the hormones insulin and leptin, which is crazy because we're still learning a lot about leptin. Leptin sort of counters insulin, and we know that insulin affects leptin. What I have seen is I don't have to worry about leptin, because if I can get insulin levels lower by healing insulin resistance, then leptin kind of falls along with it. that resistance to leptin decreases too as well. And we need leptin. We look at a healthy individual, they don't have chronically elevated leptin or chronically elevated insulin levels, and they're sensitive to it. Leptin on its own is supposed to be a regulatory hormone from your fat cells to be able to tell hey, I'm gaining fat. Let's slow down the fat gain. So you literally have this hormone that can influence the hypothalamus, the brain, to then turn around and affect your metabolic rate, slow that down, and change your hunger too as well. So it's so crazy that there's still so many people that have this idea that it's all about calories. And it blows my mind because, and this is where I think they get confused, because they are correct, because their biggest defense on the calorie side is you have to be in a surplus to gain weight calorie wise, and you have to be in a deficit. So that is true, but they get lost afterwards because then they think that invalidates the other aspect, which is the hormones are influencing and basically almost to a certain extent controlling whether you are in a caloric surplus or whether you are in a deficit. And it's not so simple and black and white that I can just control my calories, shoot for 1800. And yeah, that works. And some people I've noticed are lucky enough where that plateau that would affect most people who stay in a caloric deficit over time. Some people are blessed with this ability to where, I literally say it like this, they're just lucky enough to starve off all their fat and their body never plateaus. They're lucky, but that's the exception. 95% of people, they restrict their calories for over a period of time consecutively. That body is going to react with a hard met plateau. And that's why I bring it back to, it's the hormones. It's the hormones. It's the hormones. It's the hormones.
And Dean, you got it spot on. Insulin resistance. And I don't think people realize how important insulin resistance is. We throw that word around like it's nothing, but it is at the basis of most chronic diseases that we're seeing in our world right now. And insulin resistance, basically, insulin is the hormone that takes blood sugar when we eat blood sugar that can turn it into energy and can dispose of it. It's a really important hormone. But because we've overwhelmed our system with the amount of sugar that we consume, and we'll talk about fructose in a minute, that the cells have now become resistant. It's like the old drunk uncle who's knocking at your door and they're not opening. But that drunk uncle is not just sitting out there, he's starting to throw rocks at the windows now. It's becoming destructive. It's not that it just cannot go in the cell and do its work. Insulin, it's an anabolic hormone that is for fat storage. The higher your insulin, the more fat storage you're in. So insulin resistance usually correlate with the amount of visceral fat, abdominal fat. This is the inflammatory fat. So it's usually like this. And insulin resistance is usually on a spectrum. Insulin resistance, you'll see increased visceral fat. Then you start having increased triglycerides, abnormal liver. Your blood pressure starts going up. Blood sugar starts going up. You become pre-diabetic. Then you start having kidney disease. You start having some protein in the urine. You start having some heart disease. Then you have Alzheimer's disease that is now called type 3 diabetes. There's even now 13 types of cancers that are associated with obesity and insulin resistance. Wow. That's why, by the way, there's a study that was just done that showed that GLP-1s, they've done a really big, they looked at a registry of patients, and they've seen that patients, the longer they stay on GLP-1s, there's a decreased risk of colorectal cancer. Wow. One of the 13 that are associated with obesity, because insulin resistance is at the base of so many of those. Insulin resistance is equal to inflammation, is equal to aging, is equal to chronic diseases. And why GLP-1 works so well? Because it addresses insulin resistance at its core. No other medication have been able to do this. That's why GLP-1s work for kidney disease, liver disease, heart disease, Alzheimer's dementia, and all of those things. What's the basis of all of this? It's insulin resistance.
100%. Yeah. I, across the board, find that if we focus on one thing, as I stated earlier, that's going to get the most results. And this is where the controversy exists, going back to the whole basis of obesity, because it's frustrating, I should say, that the literature hasn't caught up to this concept. In fact, if we were to have a literature-based discussion, there's actually probably more randomized control studies from my research supporting the calorie perspective, and the high level clinical randomized control studies. We still have yet in terms of when we're talking about what's more effective for weight loss, the basis of obesity. That's when you look at a book like Obesity Code, which I still consider to be the best book for the scientific and hormonal basis of obesity. When he's defending his position, Dr. Jason Fung, he has to provide, and he does, hundreds of different various levels of studies on all sorts of different levels, some high, some low. But he takes it from the perspective of, let's look at all the different mechanisms, because literature is great and literature is important. But the point of literature is to take it back to reality and learn what works. And I think a lot of practitioners, a lot of weight loss coaches make this mistake where they look at that one study, that high-end study, and forget the point of it was to understand mechanisms. And so we're in, and this doesn't just apply to this particular example of the hormonal basis of obesity and defending it with literature, but we lack literature in a multitude of holistic approaches and various approaches. So we have to be able to take a step back and go, yes, literature is important, but that's one big piece of the overall puzzle. The most important thing is what's actually working in the trenches. You're working with patients. We're working with patients. I can tell you emphatically, the hormonal basis of obesity explains to a T the results that we're seeing because we focus on insulin resistance. And then the secondary things come into play, which I want to chat about a little bit. Inflammation is huge. Inflammation has its own roles of making it harder for your body to mobilize fat and making it harder for your body to burn fat as well. And then your body has to be adapted. It has to be able to actually process and mobilize fat. And so that's why I call those the big three, insulin resistance being the number one. But inflammation too, that's a big deal. So if you're suffering with an inflammatory condition, an autoimmune disease, then for you as an individual, that's probably the most important thing that you need to target is your inflammation levels simultaneous to addressing the insulin resistance. If you want to have success at the end of the tunnel of not just losing weight, but ultimately being able to wean off the meds.
Yeah, completely. And you talk about autoimmune disease. Interestingly, that we're seeing with GLP-1, a lot of autoimmune disease may go into remission. I had the other day a patient that had Hashimoto's, positive TPO antibodies, and thyroid disease. After 6 months on, I used tirzepatide, Mounjaro, after 6 months, the antibodies disappeared. And I was like, wow. I called my endocrinology friend. This guy has seen that also. We did a literature search. It looks like for psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis, there's case reports that they're seeing this, that putting patients on GLP-1 actually can decrease the autoimmune response, again, because of the decrease of inflammation that's secreted by the visceral adipose tissue that is at the basis of insulin resistance. So there's more studies now showing this because the incidence of autoimmune disease is going as high. Insulin resistance, obesity rates are going up. So is the rate of autoimmune disease and those different cancers and heart disease and Alzheimer's dementia. It's not a coincidence. There's a lot of links to it. And I'm going to tell you that another theory of obesity that I just read, and that can almost put all of those together, whether it's the calorie in versus calorie out. There's the seeds oil hypothesis. There's the protein salvage, that if we don't eat enough protein, that our body will favor to keep in fat. But the fructose hypothesis, I really like. Because when did we start seeing this increasing rate of obesity? It is really in the industrial world, when we really started in this country adding high fructose corn syrup to everything. And fructose is the only blood sugar that actually can decrease ATP production. That's why bears who go in hibernation tends to favor fructose, because you can pack on the fat and at the same time slow down your metabolism. So on that hypothesis, obesity is a disease of, although you have excess calories, you have low ATP production. So you're looking at somebody who's overweight, you have all these extra calories. You should be full of energy, be able to burn all this. You can't burn that fructose. If we're telling anybody anything, the way to help with insulin resistance, sugar, but even more importantly, high fructose corn syrup. Stay away from this. And in the US, because of the corn lobby, we have so much money that goes into this that we have to put high fructose corn syrup in so many products. It's not like this in Europe.
100%. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And fructose and its roles in terms of how it's only processed in the liver, and that we understand now, at least we're beginning to understand, that liver congestion, that fat buildup over the liver as well as over most organs, which is why central obesity now is starting to be a better risk factor. It is a better risk factor from what I've studied than just general BMI. I've seen videos on TikTok of people saying ignore BMI. I'm like, no, hold on. Let's not ignore BMI. It's a quick, fast ratio. But yes, is it accurate? No, it gives us a very general estimation. But yeah, your height to waist ratio, I think, is even more important because of, like you said, that central adiposity really tells us that there's a greater likelihood of the organs themselves. And that's the worst spot we want to have fat deposits, is around the organs, and then even worse in the organs. I was actually reading the diabetes code from Dr. Fung, and what he, because he's got I'm sure you're familiar with his clinic in Canada where he's literally reversing obesity and diabetes with just fasting. So he does what we do, but without the meds, which is, I love that, but it's just, to me, it's not practical. And I think you having seen what you've seen for 20 years, doing it without the meds, it's hard. Oh my gosh.
But if it works for some people, that's why we should have all of those different tools in our tool belt. If somebody can do all with fasting on its own, great. Let's encourage you with this. If somebody just needs metformin, and really like maybe whatever it is, and all the way down to GLP-1 for life, by whatever means necessary, we need to tackle that visceral adipose tissue, that insulin resistance. Now we have different tools, so it's not one size fits all. So that's why for practitioners like you and me, we can deal with whoever's coming through the door, because it's not going to be a cookbook recipe. It's going to be, let me see your physiology. Let me hear your history. What has worked for you in the past? This is what we can do. And then it's fluid. Not everybody follow the same path. Some people can come off after 3 months and they keep their weight off. Some people have to stay on it for life. So you have to be able to be very flexible, to do personalized medicine, and to do all of this with a lot of compassion and empathy, to realize that nothing is wrong with the people going through this. And if you try to do this, you'll never be successful.
I definitely hear you on that for sure.
One thing I wanted to add also, you're talking about congestion of the liver, fatty liver disease. That's called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. They're actually changing the title now to metabolic associated fatty liver disease, because they're like, it's same thing. It's insulin resistance. So anybody listening, if ever you do your yearly blood test and they tell you your liver tests are a little bit out of range, I have patients who tell me, I've always been like this. It's normal for me. No, it's not.
Yes,
it's not. It's most likely a little bit of fat around the liver, or you can have a lot of fat in the liver and you have normal blood tests. So I encourage everybody, if you have obesity, get a liver ultrasound, because if you have fatty liver, there's even more urgency for you to lose that visceral fat and correct your insulin resistance, because that can progress into fibrosis and eventually liver cirrhosis. It is an epidemic that's happening in the US now. The rates are going up. And usually when a doctor diagnoses a patient with fatty liver disease, the recommendation are just go home, lose weight, and exercise. Now, GLP-1s, they did a study with semaglutide. So most of the studies were done with semaglutide since it came out first. Very efficient for fatty liver disease. And the newer GLP-1, retatrutide, that's going to be the triple agonist for GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon. That study was crazy. They put out a preliminary study. Decreases fatty liver by 80 to 90%.
I've been looking at retatrutide. Is the stimulation of the glucagon receptors, is that pretty similar mechanism of action of what metformin's doing?
We're not sure. We think so, but definitely at a much higher level. Glucagon, it's weird. It's part of the incretin hormones. So it's amazing. Again, I always say that, right? Technology got us into that trouble. Why are we having so much obesity? Because we eat engineered food, we poison our environment. Technology caused a lot of this. But you know what? Technology will get us out of this. The medication we're developing now, before you know it, there's going to be gene therapy to help us with this. There's a gene therapy, CRISPR, that already can reverse decreased cholesterol by almost 80 to 90%. I'm hopeful about the future of metabolic medicine. GLP-1 is the first amazing tool, but there's more coming.
I'm personally apprehensive for the gene therapies, but I think you have a lot more wisdom behind you too as well. So that's actually makes me feel better that you're more hopeful. No, there's a GLP-1 that's gene-based. I'll have to send you the article, but after patients finish their weight loss, They gave them one treatment of this gene therapy based GLP-1 medication. That was it. That's all they needed. And they were maintaining their weight loss with one treatment of this.
And what's amazing with technology, every time I go to those conferences, biohacking conferences, longevity conferences, it's like a snowball movement. Technology is moving so quickly. New drugs are going to keep appearing. And in a perfect world, we would not need those medications. But we live in a toxic world where our food sources have been stripped. 80% of the micronutrients have disappeared. Electrolytes have become big on electrolytes. So yes, we live in a toxic world, although we try, me and you, we try to eat healthy, but we're still exposed. So technology, and I'm very excited about gene editing therapy, CRISPR. Yes, there's going to be people like everything that use it the wrong way, but this is science fiction that's knocking at our door. It's very close.
Wow. Yeah, I know there's a ton of GLPs besides just retatrutide. I saw 5 or 10 that are within the next 3 to 5 years.
That's amazing. To me, I welcome this. And the big question is, eventually insurance companies will have no choice but covering those. It is not fair that the most important determinant of disease and aging, we have an amazing solution for it. And your insurance company that you pay so much money for is telling you that it's not covered. This is horrible.
Is this for people that even with obesity, you're saying are still not getting covered? Because I thought it was across the board. I know for diabetes, it's pretty straightforward. I have heard for obesity that these insurance companies are still fighting.
They're still fighting for obesity, although now it's been FDA approved. It's happening more, but they're fighting.
They're still fighting.
It's very expensive, but the money you save in the back end, that's what they need to realize. I'm an optimist. I think that's going to change. They'll be confronted with the evidence that there's no choice for that. Are we 1 year away, 3 years away? It remains to be seen. But it is not fair now that it costs so much money to be able to afford this, to treat your disease. Imagine if we did that to insulin or to antibiotics, that you can't treat your disease. This is what's happening.
Wow. Yeah, I as much as we think the insurance companies always follow suit with big pharma, they are their own massive entity too, and they don't always follow suit. So it'll be interesting to see how that unwinds for sure. Wow.
Yeah, completely. And Dean, I give you so much credit for doing this and for sharing your personal story also. You've overcome, but you're still fighting. This is a fight you're going to have for the rest of your life. Anybody who deals with weight issues, they know that this is going to be something they have to be vigilant their whole life. All it takes, it's a bad week, a bad month, and then you start in that spiral down again.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what we do that has been the closest thing I've ever been able to provide to patients to deal with just that. Because yes, I think we beat obesity. The person stabilizes, their weight's normal, their body fat normal, they're healthy now. Yes, I think they're always going to have to almost look behind their back, right? Look behind their shoulders. You're never going to be able to return to some sort of baseline to where your friend Jimbo, who's never been overweight, he's got it easy. But the reality is, I agree with that. Now, at the same note, though, I will say, having personally struggled with that for 10 years and zigzagging and living that, we've noticed a decent amount of stability with these patients, I think, because of the flow protocol and what we're doing. And that's where that aggressive fasting comes into play. I'll give you an example. I get asked a lot of times, because we have stages of fasting, right? And our second stage, which is still pretty aggressive for a lot of people, is getting them to fast for 24 hours twice a week and then intermittent fast the other days. Like, that's not our deepest stage. Yet for a lot of people, that's enough to get them to lose their weight. So one of the questions I get asked a lot is, why do I need to progress to the 48 hours per week, which is, to be clear, everybody watching this, that's a common template that we use. And then we adjust it patient to patient, but that's like the general goal, somewhere around that 36 to 48, sometimes even more every single week, which, like you said before, it's very aggressive. It's the world's most aggressive protocol. So why do I need to do that if I can lose all the weight and I'm losing great on 24 twice a week? The reason being is, and this is my observation, making clinical observation and trying to guess with my understanding of the mechanisms. But I think losing weight is one thing, but healing insulin resistance is quite another thing. And so what I have found is the patients who follow our protocol and move forward and do the 48 per week, they have an easier time sustaining their weight versus people who did just the intermittent and lost their weight, or just the stage 1 24. So I clinically see that across the board all the time. And so you tell me what you think, but my observation is if we can lose weight with more aggressive, deeper fasts, that we are healing insulin resistance better. We are healing insulin resistance, reducing inflammation at a deeper level, alongside making the patient leptin sensitive again too as well. That my guess is that's causing the ability for them to be more stable. And then the instructions we give them is, okay, let's decrease it now. You don't need to do it every single week, but for life, we tell our patients 48 hours, or again, somewhere between 36, 48. What's cool about it is they can vary with their life. They don't have to be so hard set, but just get a long fast in somewhere between 36 to 48. Get that in once a month. If you can do that once a month for the rest of your life, then you will have stability.
And I agree with you. And again, we won't have any studies because you're doing amazing with this. I love this because, and again, remember when we started, right? And as trainer, we all knew this. We told everybody, it's 3 meals a day and 2 snacks. Did you get your snacks today? How wrong was this advice?
Oh my gosh, very wrong.
We kept insulin level high the whole time. I agree with you 100%, Dean. And it's amazing that that patients can get to this. But what I meant is 100%. And the better metabolic flexibility you have, the less inflammation you have, the better you're able to sustain it. But it's still tough. All it takes, life happens. Patients doing so well, then they have stress. I usually say either stress or vacation knocks you out. You have a bad week at work. You have a big life situation, divorce, change of jobs, and all those things you've learned go away. And then for that patient who always suffered from obesity, the possibility of it coming back is higher, and then get you there again. So that's why you have to maintain some kind of a protocol, which fasting is an easy one. I love your fasting protocol because there's nothing to do. You just don't do.
Yeah, exactly. It gives them a lot more wiggle room. Yeah. It gives them more freedom, which is so important.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm a lot into Eastern philosophy a lot, because in Western thoughts we're very into doing. Most people, if they gain weight, they're like, I'm going to exercise again. I'm going to cut down to 1,200 calories. I'm going to do. And I've learned a lot now about a Taoist concept called Wu Wei, the art of non-doing. Sometimes not doing anything is the best. And your art of non-doing, you know what, you gain weight? Stop eating for a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, I love
Stop
that.
eating. Go fasting.
Yeah. Look, this is what our freaking ancestors did, not by choice, but that's like we talked about last episode. I won't go too deep into it, but we're the result of the ancestors who were the best at doing that, at having a body that can consume large amounts of energy and store it for future usage. We're the result of the best ones. And so to turn around and think now all of a sudden the best thing for humans is to do the opposite of that.
Yeah. Which is when you hear the average dietitian, the average RD will tell you 2,000 calories a day, 3 meals, 2 snacks, mostly carbs. The pyramid, carbs is at the bottom. And I still hear this and it drives me crazy.
Yeah, it blows my mind too. It really does. I wonder how long before we hit some breaking point on the food pyramid. What's your guess? You've been practicing longer than I have. What's your guess until we finally have where they come out and they say, okay, we were wrong about the food pyramid? Is that ever going to happen?
I'm not very optimistic, man. Conventional medicine, traditional medicine, it's like a big ship that you're trying to steer away. By the time this gets to the average academic person, I think it's going to be a long time. But we're not going to wait for them, man. We're in the trenches. We know how it is. Most patients now are looking for this. They know that, you know what, I need to go to people who are in the trenches, are getting results, using different tools, understand me. Don't just look at a guideline and say you need to fit within this guideline.
being in the holistic space for so long too, you can say that about the entire holistic space when you compare that to the entire allopathic Western medicine space, but specifically with what we're talking about, weight loss, absolutely. I mean, it's growing. God, I love that so much when we get those calls from patients, and we get so many, because we're the only clinics doing what we're doing right now, this more holistic approach towards GLPs. And we get calls all the time with people just like, it makes so much sense. That's the approach I want to do. Definitely energizing.
And with the GLP-1s, what I tell my patients a lot when they are going to do the fasting, so much easier to do the fasting with the GLP-1s, and so much easier to do it right after your shots, because that's when your appetite control is the best. And then eventually you can do it without even the shots.
Quick minute here. Wanted to tell you guys about the free Facebook group that we do weekly live coaching, as well as a PDF where I break down step by step on lifestyle interventions, specifically how we approach the long fasting format, with the goal in mind of helping you guys wean off the medications for the rest of your life, whether you're getting this prescribed by a primary care physician or whether you're doing this on your own. Take advantage of these resources, guys. We'll provide a link for this so that you guys can join yourself. And back to the show.
So I love what you do with your patients, Dean. You empower them. You let them know you can do this. And if you can, it's okay. Do less, then try again. Keep trying. Challenge yourself. You've done 24 hours. Let's push you to 48. People need this. We tend to be a little bit, no, don't push. People have way more resilience than what we give them credit for. And that's what you've been able to harness, man. So I give you a lot of kudos, a lot of props on this.
Real quick, I know we got to end pretty soon. You're the one that got me onto AOD 9604. Oh man, I just want to share with you, and then we could talk about the mechanisms, because the AOD, it never got popular. And so my theory is because, and you tell me what you think, total guess here, is that like on its own, because AOD mobilizes body fat, and that's very important to mobilize body fat as the first step towards burning fat, but you still need the stimulus to burn fat. So GLP-1s give you the stimulus by suppressing your appetite. There's your calorie burning. There's your deficit. Mobilization, you have to mobilize it first, but you need the deficit. So AOD doesn't do anything, from what I understand, in terms of the deficit. So I think a lot of people were taking AOD and mobilizing and then restoring.
Yeah, completely. And just to let everybody know what AOD is, the fat burning portion of the molecule of the peptide of growth hormone. So take away everything that questionable, whether there's tumor growth and cancer growth, is just the fat burning part. And it's crazy that the FDA now put AOD as one of the peptides that they call illegal, where it's been shown that forever that this is one of the safest medication. It was generally considered safe. As a combination to GLP-1, it's great. But I'm going to tell you, man, what I love with tirzepatide, the dual agonist, the GIP has fat burning abilities because they found GIP receptors on fat cells. So GIP is actually a true fat burner compared to GLP-1 by itself.
Okay. GIP. When patients ask me about it, I basically tell them it does a lot of what GLP does, but then it's got some of its own uniqueness too as well. That's news to me about its fat burning potential.
Yeah. So it's again, I'm not an expert on incretin hormones. GIP is one of the 3 incretin hormones. So it does the same thing, but different. And what was intriguing for me when I tried to read a lot of where GLP-1 came from, were they invented? GIP was found, they found receptors on the fat cells. They found GLP-1 receptor in the hypothalamus cells. So the GIP, that's what made it different. And to me, that's what differentiates tirzepatide, Mounjaro, versus all the other GLP-1s. From liraglutide in 2005 all the way to semaglutide, it was only GLP-1, which is still great. When they added GIP, that's when it made the magic, because now it's almost like, to me, GIP is equivalent to AOD.
Yeah.
Because you added the fat burning. And I don't know if you've seen that. They have head-to-head studies of semaglutide versus tirzepatide. People lost almost 3 times the amount of weight with tirzepatide versus semaglutide. It's still a GLP-1, more affinity, but to me, it's the GIP addition that made all the difference.
Made the difference. Yeah. Wow. That makes a lot of sense. No, I think that's probably a good spot to end it there, man. Every time we get on the show, I'm like thinking of the next 2.
Yes.
Holy
yes, man. This is great. And we're going to keep fighting. We're going to keep talking. We're going to keep bringing a lot of these subjects. I hope everybody gets something out of this. I tell my patients, I tell my friends, go ask your doctor about those medications.
Right.
If they write it, find a provider that can help guide you. On TikTok, there's a lot of great information about it. There's communities forming around this because finally we need to use those tools, and we need to really, it's giving power back to the people. And I'm excited about this.
100%, 100%. No, as always, man, it was a pleasure, and I look forward to our next episode, Rudy.
Yes, sir. Great talking to you, man.
All right, you take care. All right. So we are still live streaming right now. I'm going to end it. As always, guys, this is my passion, and this is what we do, is help patients in a holistic format address their weight loss utilizing GLP-1 medications like semaglutide, tirzepatide, alongside some other powerful fat mobilizing agents to help our patients address those underlying mechanisms that drive obesity, insulin resistance, inflammation, metabolic flexibility. We utilize these science-backed peptides and medications so that we can get into the deep lifestyle modifications. We talked a lot about fasting, but the proper approach towards diet, the proper training, proper sleep management, stress management, all the lifestyle approaches that are going to help us address those underlying mechanisms that I truthfully believe are the things that actually drive obesity. And so we have many levels of support for you guys. If you're watching this for the first time, if you're asking yourself, how do I freaking learn more? If I want to work with you, let me break down all the various resources and how you can reach out to us. So company name is Colorado Medical Solutions. And what I'm going to do is in this video as well, depending on what social media platform you are watching this on, there's a bio link on our homepage for all social media. So just click that main link, and then you can see all sorts of different levels of support. You can schedule a consultation with us directly if you are just ready to go. And we have some pretty awesome promotions that we're doing right now for the holidays. If you're not ready to schedule an appointment, but you definitely want to do something, let's say you're in a situation where you already have medications, you're working with a primary care obesity specialist, and you've been prescribed these medications, but you're looking for support. So I actually just published my book, guys. So you can also pick up my book on Amazon. There's a link in that bio too as well, Fast, Feast, and Flourish. It's a deep, deep dive covering what we just talked about. So I just launched our online training course. That is great for getting the support. We do weekly training on it. It's freaking $10 a month, $50 up front, guys. I priced it very low because I'm excited to launch that. And probably within the next couple months, that price is probably going to end up being somewhere between $20, $30 a month, I would imagine, maybe even more. So right now it's priced at 10, and of course you'll be grandfathered into that. So that's a great community if you, like I said, already have the medications or peptides and you just need the support and the coaching system. And at the very minimum, I have a free Facebook group too as well. So let's say you are not ready to do anything. What's really cool about that Facebook community is when I go live, because I'm actually going to go live tonight at 7:30, which is about 2 hours from now, and on my own, every single training that I do gets fully recorded and uploaded to the free Facebook community as well. And I have a lot of people that work that community because I am on a mission to help 1 million people battle obesity in a holistic format without lifelong dependence upon medication. That's what drives me. That's what I get up every single morning, and I'm freaking emphatic about it. So that's where you can find the resources. And I look forward to everybody. I love everybody here that's been watching this. Thank you for staying connected and staying tuned. And as always, guys, stay healthy out there.